Morning, everyone. The quote that Linda, does this sound all right? Can you hear me? Yes. The quote that Linda has just made, which is about motive and things, it comes from the Esoteric Teachings, which is a series of booklets that is sort of by Peruka. I didn't recall reading it until sort of very recently, when a friend sent part of the quote and wondered where the rest of it came from. I don't think it's in the collected writings, but it's described. It says it's another valuable document in the ES archives at Point Loma is a letter from the Master M, copied in W.Q. Judge's handwriting. In the left-hand margin are penciled shorthand outlines which read, "Received from M, December 87. An extract from this document is hereunder reproduced for the benefits of students of the ES. It's this idea of motive and right motive is an interesting one, because what at the end of the day is right motive? And it might seem fairly obvious what right motive is, but it's something that really would be interesting to start the study group off with when we get to that, because this talk is a kind of exploring, and it will lead into the study group. I'm going to read something from The Secret Doctrine, which is on page 2 of the proem, and it's in relation to the motive, and see if it links in any way to that. But it says, Plato proves himself an initiate when saying in Cratylus that theos is derived from the verb to move, to run, as the first astronomers who observed the motions of the heavenly bodies call the planets the gods. So is right motive something to do with observations? Well, it says of the motions of the planets, the gods. Is right motive when we observe the gods and look to the gods? And what does that mean? I mean, deity. What exactly is deity? It most probably needs lots of things to lots of different people. Now, we had two really marvellous talks yesterday from the people from Point Loma. I hope that's the right way to say it. And something that had been sort of quite puzzling is this difference between radiation and emanation. And there it was yesterday evening in the discussion paper that was handed out, or in the study paper. And it's really, we have the talk about emanation, but this is radiation. Radiation is, so to say, the unconscious and spontaneous shooting forth, the action of a something from which this act takes place. And then again it says, while radiation represents, to my mind, this is HPB saying this, in the pre-cosmic period, of course, the instantaneous action, like that of a piece of paper set on fire under a burning glass, of which act the sun knows nothing. So this idea of spontaneity. So it's deity or God or Lord geometrizes. We'd just start with a few pictures of snowflakes, which certainly describe this in nature. They're marvellous geometrical forms. Now this is what HBB says about them in the Transactions of the Blavatsky Lodge. It'd be about page 143. The term God, unless referring to the unknown deity or absoluteness, which can hardly be supposed acting in any way. So this is this absoluteness, this an omnipresent, eternal, boundless and immutable principle of the first fundamental proposition. So that can hardly be supposed acting in any way, has always meant in ancient philosophies the collectivity of the working and intelligent forces in nature. And she gives a marvellous example, really. The word forest is singular, yet it is the term to express the idea of thousands or even millions of trees of different kinds. Materialists have the option of saying nature, or still better, law geometrizes, if they so prefer. But in the days of Plato, the average reader would hardly have understood the metaphysical distinction and real meaning. The truth, however, of nature ever geometrizing is easily ascertained. Here is an instant. Heat is the modification of the motions of particles of matter. Now it is a physical and mechanical law that particles or bodies in motion on themselves assume a spheroidal form, this from a globular planet down to a drop of rain. Observe the snowflakes, which along with crystals exhibit to you all the geometrical forms existing in nature. As soon as motion ceases, the spheroidal shape alters, or as Tyndall tells us, it becomes a flat drop. Then the drop forms an equilateral triangle, a hexagon, and so on. In observing the breaking up of ice particles in a large mass, through which he passed heat rays, he observed that the first shape the particles assumed was triangular or pyramidal, then cubical, and finally hexagonal, etc. Thus even modern physical science corroborates Plato and justifies his proposition. So the snowdrops, they do have this kind of shape of the interlaced triangles, and they're hexagonal if you join them on the outside. And this is something we will be focusing on the interlaced triangles. These are just some other examples of geometrizing in nature, and this one of a crop circle in the UK, which is pretty amazing.
Only in the UK.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Now, we're actually going to really skirt this very quickly. Point Loma, I think, has done quite a lot of research with this, with Gordon Plummer and his book on the mathematics of cosmic mind. And it is a marvellous book to read about it all, and it takes a lot of study, really. But the one thing of these 5 Platonic solids is that firstly you've got, they're either made of triangles, which is 3, squares with the cube, which is 4, or pentagons, which is 5 with the dodecahedron. And the numbers 3, 4, 5 are really very significant. So you can use them in lots of ways. With a right angled triangle, 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared, or 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals 12, or 3 times 4 times 5 is 60. 3 squared plus 4 squared is 5 squared. So the numbers and the geometrical figures are sort of interchangeable. Now the tetractys, which we had yesterday, is another significant symbol. It seems you can read a lot about it and end up knowing nothing about it. It's a very strange figure that we'll keep going on. With the tetractys, it's interesting that the Pythagoreans took their sort of oaths of secrecy on it, and you know, why did they do that? Why was it so significant to them? And with the ES, of course, they took their pledge on the higher self. And is there a difference between the two? Well, what we're going to look at is to see how Deity geometrizes in the Secret Doctrine and the Voice of the Silence and other secret teachings. That's if it does. In the summing up, after the stanzas in Volume 1, HBB does a recapitulation, and this will be on the handouts for later, but I'll just read that now. It says, "The secret doctrine is the accumulated wisdom of the ages, and its cosmogony alone is the most stupendous and elaborate system. Can you hear me all right when I'm facing that way? Yeah. E.g., even the exotericism of the Puranas. But such is the mysterious power of occult symbolism that the facts which have actually occupied countless generations of initiated seers and prophets to marshal, to set down and explain in the bewildering series of evolutionary progress are all recorded on a few pages of geometrical signs and glyphs. The flashing gaze of those seers has penetrated into the very kernel of matter and recorded the soul of things there, where an ordinary profane, however learned, would have perceived but the external work of form. And it's as if the sort of at the end of that, the sort of where an ordinary profane, however learned, and you can get to a massive extent of learning on that level, but it's really all in the realm of the lower mind. Whereas the flashing gaze of those seers has penetrated into the very kernel of matter and recorded the soul of things there, would really be higher mind. So one thing, there are a few things here now to focus on. So we've got the mysterious power of occult symbolism. And the power of occult symbolism, it's an interesting thing to say. And is it the mysterious power of hidden symbolism? And do we connect through the symbolism in a different way than when we're talking? And these are all recorded on a few pages of geometrical signs, and so they really, it goes to the very kernel of matter, to the soul of things, and it's in these glyphs, if we can only get to them and understand them. So with the flashing gaze of those seers, I'll just read a piece from The Secret Doctrine. This is on page 46. I'll just get... it's stanza 1, sloka 8. Alone, the one a form of existence stretched boundless, infinite, causeless and dreamless sleep. And the life pulsated unconscious in universal space throughout that all-presence which is sensed by the opened eye of the Dhamma. And this leads to two footnotes. In India, it is called the Eye of Shiva. This is the opened eye. But beyond the Great Range, it is known as Dhamma's opened eye in esoteric phraseology. So you've got India, but beyond the Great Range, however you see that, beyond the Himalayas, is it on the earth, or is it in a different realm, on a different plane? Dhamma means a purified soul, one who has become a Jivan Mukta, the highest adept, or rather a Mahatma, so called. His opened eye is the inner spiritual eye of the seer, and the faculty which manifests through it is not clairvoyance as ordinarily understood. That is, the power of seeing at a distance, but rather the faculty of spiritual intuition, through which direct and certain knowledge is obtainable. This faculty is intimately connected with the third eye, which mythological tradition ascribes to certain races of men. But these have been recorded by thousands of generations of seers, which seems a really important point, because with clairvoyance, it seems you often hear that people have a clairvoyant experience, and somehow that is right, and it has to be right. But on if the police say if there's an accident and people see it, they will say quite opposite things of what happened. So with ordinary clairvoyance, there are many views of it. It's not just one sees it and it sees it's right. It's something that's useful to remember. And is the flashing gaze, I mean, does the swastika there sort of give something of a flashing gaze? What is it that's in these seers? This is I'm going to quote something from Ramana Maharshi here about the Indian sage. He says, when the mind abides in the heart, in this way, the I, the root of all thoughts, vanishes. In the voice of the silence, we have the mind is the great slayer of the real. Let the disciple slay the slayer. Having vanished, so I'll read it again. When the mind abides in the heart in this way, the I, the root of all thoughts, vanishes. Having vanished, the ever-existing self alone will shine. Perhaps relating to the higher self. The state where not even the slightest trace of the thought I remains is alone Swarupa, one's real nature. This alone is called Mauna, that is silence. Being still in this way can alone be called seeing through true knowledge. Making the mind subside into the self is being still. On the other hand, knowing the thoughts of others, knowing the three times, past, present and future, and knowing events in distant places, these can never be seeing through true knowledge. And there's also, regarding the I, the E-Y-E, by Meister Eckhart, the I, by which I see God, is the same I by which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one and the same, one in seeing and one in knowing. And we also get the all-knowing, we get the all-knowing eye in the triangle sometimes. Now, at the end of the handout, there are some quotes from the commentaries, from comments relating to intuition, and they're all from the H.P. Blavatsky, the Secret Doctrine commentaries, the unpublished 1889 instructions transcribed and annotated by Michael Gomes. It's a large book out there, and basically I can thoroughly recommend it. And this is in the soul comes into it, but you may it says you may intuitively know a thing without being able to give it expression, but you must understand it. You understand it in your spiritual understanding, but very likely you cannot give it an expression, because the European languages cannot convey it. And then she says, not even Sanskrit, which is certainly 1,000 times richer. These are things you have to use your soul language for, as it is called, the inner perception and the unspoken language. And it's, goes very much in the direction of the voice of the silence. Oops. Now, the home page of the website of the European School depicts the cover of the first edition of the Secret Doctrine, and this is a photograph of the original edition, and it seems a very significant part of the book. And when we studied as students, the thing was, if you understood the Secret Doctrine, it was only then that you would understand the symbols on the cover, and vice versa. And if you're sort of reading through it and you get stuck in it, if you bring it to the symbol, it can help to unlock it. And I mean, also the proem has that kind of thing to it. When you're studying the SD, coming back to the proem all the time, it really helps and aids in the study of it. Well, so, for example, we have the Tao and the serpent there. Well, it's, TS, Theosophical Society. But sometimes, it's quite just good to get away from the problems, perhaps, and which came up yesterday about the Theosophical Society, all the various theosophical movements, and then you can sort of see the Tao and the serpent in it, is perhaps what we're really much more on about. And in the initiations in the Great Pyramid, for example, the candidate lay on the Tao. So you could see the candidate as the serpent perhaps on the Tao cross. But if he goes through that initiation and there's a transformation, you then get the emblem which is in the top part. And you have the Tau in the middle, the Ankh, which means life. Which means that if we think of this as life, perhaps we're kidding ourselves, because it's quite a different thing. And then the interlaced triangles, we'll just look at that in the moment. The serpent has become, well, it represents eternity. And the swastika spinning round, there's little jets of flame, perhaps a faux hat or fire within two circles. You get many different representations of the symbol, but the interlaced triangles don't touch the serpent at all. And then there all these other things, like the lines going across. It's like a rope going across the top and the bottom of the cover. You know, is it a rope? Is it a snake? And the fear that the snake gives. But the rope goes to the underlying core of everything. But then, you know, there are three threads, and do you thin the rope so it becomes one thread, the sattvic thread? And when you turn the cover over, the symbols at the top and in the middle and at the bottom, they all go on the lower side, but they're in the term sort of a book terminology, they're in blind, so none of the black is there. It's just grey like the rest of the cover, but it's indented in it. So, you know, if this represented a Manvantara, are there certain things that keep going through the pralaya? Those links. Now this is a quote, it's from the Mahatma letters. This symbol is, strangely enough, it isn't in the Mahatma letters, but it's in the manuscripts, but it's not in the book. And there's a note suggesting that. But it always seems such a significant symbol. It's a pity they left it out. But it says, does your British Theosophical Society know the meaning of the white and black interlaced triangles of the parent society seal that it is also adopted? Shall I explain? Let me just do it on this. He says, shall I explain? The double triangle, viewed by the Jewish Kabbalists as Solomon's seal, is, as many of you doubtless know, the Sri Antara of the archaic Aryan temple. The mystery of mysteries, a geometrical synthesis of the whole occult doctrine. The two interlaced triangles are the Buddhangams of creation. They contain the squaring of the circle, the philosophical stone, the great problems of life and death, and the mystery of evil. And then say, the chela, who can explain this sign from every one of its aspects, is virtually an adept. So, first of all, it's a chela, and the piece that Linda read out, how out of 1,000 aspirants, possibly one chela. So there's really something really deep in these symbols, which we seem to have to try and realise. And it's in the first and second editions, and it's quite interesting with the Mahatma letters that when in 1923, when Trevor Barker did them, he did them in a sort of order of subjects, and then we have the chronological edition, and both of them are used, but there's really something sort of different about the earlier edition, and because of Trevor Barker being nearer the sort of time, what was it that made him do that? So, for example, the Sri Antara in the later editions, so that would be the third and fourth, it's actually changed to Sri Yantra. But so if you think like Manu Antara, it's between two Manus, the seed and the root Manu, or whatever. So why shouldn't this be in between the two triangles? The Antara, the in-between, the Sri, or it means Lord, the two triangles. And what is in between the two triangles? It's the central point, which is the synthesis, or Atma. We are one. And how is it possible to know anything without knowing that fact? Because, like in the piece you read out, Linda, it says we really know nothing. And does that make sense that we know nothing? Because it does, doesn't it, in a way? Because in relation to the Chela, we do know nothing. Because it's lifted to the higher emblem. Well, perhaps in the study, I mean, it'd be nice to have some objections to that. And it is interesting, it's on page 345. And a lot of these links come through, and you might think, well, in the Mahatma letters, the printed version, but yes, it even comes through on that. It seems such a significant number relating back to the protonic solids. Sorry about this. Now this is the title page of the Secret Doctrine. And there is an awful lot in that as well. The Secret Doctrine, the synthesis of science, religion and philosophy. So again, what is it? What is the Secret Doctrine? when certainly when you start reading it, it's all about science, religion, and philosophy, and you might just think it's about religion, or an encyclopedia to find out about religions and things. There are lots of different views people have on it, but in another way, they're all blinds. They're science, religion, and philosophy. You could equally put 3 dots there, because surely the important thing is the synthesis, and that is really what it's about. The point in the interlaced triangles, because you might disagree with that, but the actual, it's as if after a time of studying it, the actual prose becomes poetry. And another interesting fact, because we'll start getting into numbers and sevens now. We've got 7 Duke Street, and it's where it's published, and 117 Nassau Street, New York, and then we have 1888 at the bottom is when it was published. And there really is it was going to be published earlier and at different times, but it could only possibly have been published in 1888 if you're within the law of cycles and numbers, because numbers are living entities. And if it's a difficult thing to get a handle on, that they're living entities, and therefore they do affect everything. So, to give you a quick quote regarding 1888. So, what are the 8s? They symbol the eternal, eternity. But what of the 1? So, like on page 11 from the Occult Catechism, so it sort of goes to these hot spots, so to put it. What is it that ever is? Space, the eternal anupardica. What is it that ever was? The germ in the root. What is it that is ever coming and going? The great breath. Then there are 3 eternals. No, the 3 are 1. That which ever is 1. That which ever was is 1. That which ever is being and becoming is also 1. And this is space. And that seems to that number seems to completely say what? No, the 3 are 1. And we can only sort of see it as 3 from here, but there is in fact 1. I mean, even with the sort of like with the 7 principles, you can sort of do it with your hand. You've got the physical body, the prana, which in actual fact seems to go through everything, because every principle is within every principle. The astral body, and then you've got the desires and passions, and then you've got this really huge gap, and then you've got the manas, which either is drawn down here or gravitates to the sun, so to put it, and buddhi and atma. But you could say, well, the sum should be 3, but no, it's 1. The 3 in 1. Now, just to quote from a book called Shakespearean Punctuation, and this he's writing about it and saying modern punctuation is, or at any rate attempts to be, logical. The earlier system was mainly rhythmical. Modern punctuation is uniform. The old punctuation was quite the reverse. So when in The Secret Doctrine it is edited and brought out in another edition, the punctuation and everything has a huge, enormous difference when it starts changing it. And I'll just read this example out. It's Josephine Ransom, who's collected material, and she's quoting from letters and things, mainly at Adyar. And to Colonel Olcott, HBB expressed her willingness to send the 3 finished chapters, this is of The Secret Doctrine, for Subarow to look over and correct them, or add or take out. But you shall have to go to the introduction. Sinnett is all the time offering, and I cannot consent, only for the sake of the more elegant English and good ideas for mechanical arrangement. Literary, not metaphysical. And this is where a lot of problems come with the editing of it, because it's done on a much more intellectual, correct English basis when those changes were made. And I'll give you an example in a moment. She was always wanting Subarow to do it, which he wouldn't, because of partly because he was concerned about the masters and HB bringing them in so much, and because of his he was an advitee and didn't want to let the information out. So Subarow's repeated refusals to help had become known, and then a group of Indians headed by N.D. Candelava and Chukrim Tachia took exception. Tachia said that had HBB been in India, the book would long ago have seen the light. They thought HBB had not been properly informed to the suggestions to make the book more exact in its allusions to Hindu literature, and that a few sympathetic friends could easily arrange to have the work revised. So she really didn't want that either, but the purpose of Subarow was he was an advitee, and for them it's non-dual, so there's no duality. And the Pythagoreans hated duality, the number 2. And they didn't sort of want to even acknowledge that it existed. So I don't know to what extent you can see that, but there are 3 parts from the proem in The Secret Doctrine, and the top paragraph relates to the start of the poem, an archaic manuscript, and this is all in relation to the word disc. Now, in the original edition, there 3 ways of spelling disc is used, but in the later edition, it all becomes D-I-S-K with a small d, and there's this uniformity that's put into them. So here we have an immaculate white disc within a dull black ground, and on the following page the same disc. So it's disc with a K, with a small d. And then the point in the hitherto immaculate disc. So when it's no longer immaculate, it becomes a capital D-I-S-K. And further down, only the face of the disc. So when we've got to the face of it, it's a capital D-I-S-K. In the bottom paragraph, they have it's disc with a C, and small disc, and it's the plain disc and a disc with a point in it, and there's a further one there somewhere, which I've lost myself, and the point in the disc. So there's three of them there. There's these three different spellings. Well, on page 3 of the poem, HBB gives the example of cosmos. Cosmos with a K means the noumenal cosmos, and cosmos with a C is the phenomenal. So there's all these layers going on. So you've got 3 stages of disc, and it's not a word she uses often in the Secret Doctrine, disc. It then becomes a circle and it becomes something else. But so that you can see when it comes to the disc with the C, you then start getting the geometrical symbols and this kind of thing, and they're relating to the phenomenal world, and that's why you've got the illustrations. So that is definitely poetry, and it's done in that way. Whether they set to do it in that way or whether it happened like that is also another thing to consider, because if you're working from the one and the oneness, these things will happen naturally. There's to read something out from Colonel Olcott here in 1876. He says, I'll just do that. At midnight, I had a more than ordinarily severe fit of coughing. When it was over, I saw by my bedside, distance about 2 yards, and at the height of about 5'6" from the floor, 3 small fluorescent balls of light about the size of a small orange. They were arranged thus, and formed an equilateral triangle, the base of which would measure 18 inches. First I thought it was an optical delusion, caused by my violent cough. I fixed my gaze on them, and they remained quiet, glowing with a steady phosphorescent light, which cast no gleam beyond itself. Satisfied with the phenomenon was objective, I reached a matchbox and struck a match. I could not see the balls through the match light, but when the match went out, they came again into view, just as before. I repeated the match striking 6 times, 7 in all, when they paled and gradually went out. And he goes on to say, I think his coughing, yes, God. So, as I have elsewhere explained, the 3 luminous spheres from the special form the special symbol of the lodge of our adepts. I haven't found that explanation anywhere, so if anybody knows, that would be good. What the point is, if he's striking those matches 7 times, are these 3 dots here? Does it refer to this? Are there 7 dots within it, and then it forms the tetractys that we had earlier, or not? Because there's either, and then if the tetractys itself has another 7 sort of mathematical and abstract points within that, or is it referring to something else? We'll come to the Voice of the Silence. Now this is the upper cover of the Voice of the Silence. It has words on it, as you will notice, which the Secret Doctrine didn't. But it also has these 3 dots again. And I'm going to read something that HBB says about the number 7. And numbers are living entities. I would just, it's useful to remember that, and it may help to explain some of it. The thoughtful reader must have pondered well over the mysterious import that the number 7 seems to have always had among the ancients, as succinctly epitomised in our June number, as well as the theory of cycles discussed in the July issue. It was there stated that the German scientists are now giving attention to this manifestation of the numerical harmony and periodicity of the operations of nature. I'm going to leave a lot out there. And she sort of writes things like, and it must be remembered that in not a single instance was there any intention that the number should play a part in our affairs. But on the contrary, what happened was in many cases exactly the reverse of what we desired. It was only the other day that we began to take note of the striking chain of circumstances, and some have only been recalled now at the moment of writing. Colonel Occult and the conductor of this magazine, which is HBB, made each other's acquaintance in 1874. The office number of the former was 7, the house number of the latter 17. The President's inaugural address, before the Society was delivered, November the 17th, 1875. The headquarters were established in the 47th Street. The uptown streets in New York are all designated by numbers, and Colonel Olcott's office was removed to 71 Broadway. And on the 17th of December, and it goes on and on in this way, and then they're travelling and things like that, and they're on the water in a boat, and at last, precisely at 7, one little canoe was seen tossing in the heavy sea that was running. She approached, was alongside. On her bows, painted on a white ground, was the number 7, and so on. And finally, as though to show us that our septenary destiny was not to be evaded, it was exactly 7 o'clock, as the log of the SS Chanda shows, when we sighted the pilot off Bombay Harbour. At 7:27 the bell rang to slow down the engines. At 7:47 the pilot stepped on the bridge and took command of the ship, and at 9:37 our anchor was dropped off the Apollo Bunder, and our voyage was thus ended on the 24th of July, the 77th day after the one on which we had sailed for Ceylon. So there's loads of this stuff here, and it really seems sort of very odd when you read it at first and later, that all these details about these 7, and it, you know, it's sort of, the train was 7 minutes late, which meant it left at, you know. So, you know, if it happens like that, wouldn't it be also a fact that it could happen with a book like The Voice of the Silence, and in this case you're just looking at the cover, and you know 3 and 12 are other numbers that come into it quite a lot. Find it. So, with a mystic work as The Voice of the Silence, its form is of interest too. The book is made up of 7 gatherings. what that means is a gathering is just one gathering is a large piece of paper, and then it's folded once, twice, and then a third time. So that's for all collations of books. Certainly, I don't know today if they bother about that in the same way, and they're sewn. So they're sewn down, and then the edges are cut. Not very well explained, but there. So the book is made up of 7 sheets of paper, basically. And each sheet is folded 3 times, sewn and cut. That is, so you've got 3 stitches and 4 spaces. Down each one here, there's 3 stitches, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So so 3 plus 4 equals 7, and you've got 8 leaves of 16 pages, 7 times. Okay, 16 is 7, but that applies to most books. The 7 sheets, yeah, okay, we'll leave that. And then the Voice of the Silence, on the contents page, it lists the 3 fragments. It's like that. So I know you can't see it, but basically fragment 1, 2 and 3. So fragment 1 starts on page 1. Fragment 2, the 2 paths, starts on page 23. So that's 1, 2, 3. And the 7 portals starts on page 45. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you multiply these, it equals 120, which is the 12, or comes back to the 3. Now the glossary, and there are 3 glossaries at the end, they're not in the text in the original edition. Glossary 1 has 45 glossary notes. Glossary 2 has 38 glossary notes, and glossary 3 has 37, which is 37 is the last number in the book at the end of the text and at the end of the glossaries. These added together equal 120 glossary notes, which is the same as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 multiplied. And then the Voice of the Silence divided into the 3 sections. So you've got the preface and preliminaries, the Voice of the Silence, which is 3 parts, and the glossary is 3 parts. So it's 3 sections in 7 parts. Now the preliminaries run to 14 pages. That's 2 times 7. The 3 fragments are 72 pages, and the glossaries end on page 97. The glossaries run to 25 pages. That's 2 plus 5 equals 7. The numbers, figures mentioned in the text of the preface are 270, and so that's a Roman numerals 2, so it's, and 227, they're references to the Bhagavad Gita, and sometimes those numbers are changed because it's not seen that the references fit with the actual sections in the Bhagavad Gita. So, but these are the numbers there. So 70 plus 20 is 97, which is the same as the number of the glossary notes. And there's a lovely quote in the Voice of the Silence. Arhans and sages of the boundless vision are rare as is the blossom of the Undumbara tree. Arhans are born at the midnight hour. together with the sacred plant of 9 and 7 stalks. So that's 97 again. 9 and 7 stalks. The holy flower that opes and blooms in darkness out of the pure dew and the frozen bed of snow-capped heights that are trodden by no sinful foot. And now we'll come to the cover. Now, in the upper cover, there are 16 words on there. 1 plus 6 is 7. There are 74 letters, of which 37 are capitals and 37 lowercase. Again, 3 and 7. And then the lines, there are 3 double lines and 1 single line, making 7 lines in all, and 3 dots. The measurement of the cover is 12 by 16 centimetres, or 100 by 160 millimetres. That is 1 plus 2 equals 3, and 1 plus 6 equals 7. The book is published at 7 Duke Street, and in New York at 21 Park Row, 3 times 7. And HPB ends her article that I was reading for, she's the number 7 in our society. She said, to ascribe to mere coincidence this strange, if not altogether unprecedented concatenation of events in which the number 7 was, as the astrologers might call it in the ascendants, would be an absurdity. The most superficial examination of the doctrine of chance will suffice to show that, and if indeed we must admit that some mysterious law of numerical potentialities is asserting itself in shaping the fortunes of the Theosophical Society, whither shall we turn for an explanation but to those ancient Asiatic philosophies which were built upon the bedrock of occult sciences. And her article on the number 7, which came shortly before this one, she finishes, whence then the mystery and sacredness of the number 7. So it's something to delve into. What's the meaning of it? Because we see these things, but that they're all 7s, and you can really say, well, so what? But there's more to it. And I'm running late, so I'll just see what. We will continue now with pages 3 and 4 of the Secret Doctrine to study those, which is here, it isn't easy to see, but it's got these 12 geometrical signs and symbols. I think this is the 3 dots are extremely interesting, and they sort of it's the 10 dots. In the Tetractys, they seem to be relate more to the it's difficult to say but they belong more to the phenomenal, but these 3 dots seem to relate to the noumenal. And any comments on that would be helpful. And that was that. I'd forgotten I'd put it there. And these are the first 4 symbols we come to: the disc with the point, the disc with the diameter, and the disc with the cross. Okay. Thank you. I think we're running late.